I woke up and found the house completely empty. My son and daughter-in-law had sold all my furniture and disappeared. "She deserves Paris, Mom," my son said. I only smiled. 15 days later, they came back. But this time, I had prepared a much bigger gift for her. When she saw it, she fainted on the spot. My name is Julie. I'm 68 years old. And that Tuesday morning began like so many others lately, with the heavy silence of someone who lives in her own house, but feels like an invisible guest. I opened my eyes slowly. The morning light slipped through the crack in the curtains of my bedroom, the only room that still felt like mine. I didn't hear the coffee maker brewing, nor the blaring TV that my daughter-in-law Madison used to turn all the way up every morning. Nothing, just silence, the kind that makes your spine shiver. I got out of bed, feeling that familiar ache in my back that only people past 60 truly understand. I slipped on my worn slippers and walked to the door. The hallway was dark and eerily quiet. Usually, Madison would already be up, filling the house with that cloying perfume of hers and scattering clothes everywhere. But not today. Absolute silence. I walked into the living room, and my heart sank. The room was empty. All the pieces that had once told the story of my life with Robert were gone. I ran to the kitchen and then the dining room, searching for something familiar, but every corner stared back at me bare and hollow. My legs trembled. I grabbed the wall to keep from falling. Then I saw it on the window ledge lay a small, folded piece of paper. My hands shaking, I picked it up and opened it. It was Daniel's handwriting, my only son. "Mom, we needed the money. Madison's always dreamed of seeing Paris. She deserves it. We sold the furniture. Don't worry, it was just old stuff anyway. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Love you." I read it once. Twice. 3 times. My entire body trembled. That wasn't old stuff. That was my life. The memories of the man I had loved for 40 years. The legacy of my grandmother. The grand piano Robert used to play on cold winter nights. Everything that remained of the life I had built, and they sold it as if it were garbage, just to pay for a trip to Paris. I sat down on the cold floor and cried until I couldn't anymore. But beneath the tears, something else began to rise, cold, sharp, unshakable anger. At that moment, looking at those bare walls, I understood they hadn't just taken my belongings. They had stolen my respect, my dignity, my voice. And I was going to get all of it back, but not the way they expected. 2 years before that horrible day, I still believed I had a real family. It was a Sunday afternoon at a backyard barbecue with close neighbors when Daniel introduced me to Madison for the first time. She wore a floral dress, high heels, her hair softly curled, and a dazzling smile. "Mom, this is Madison, the woman I want today. Spend my life with," Daniel said, with that sparkle in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Madison hugged me tightly. "Mrs. Julie, Daniel's told me so much about you. It's an honor to meet the mother of such a wonderful man." She was warm, kind, almost perfect, and I wanted to believe her because mothers always want to believe in the best. Robert had passed away 3 years earlier from a heart attack. The house had become too quiet, too empty. Seeing my son happy again felt like the only thing I needed. The first few months were like a fairy tale. Madison visited weekly, brought cake, helped me with the garden, watched old movies with me. "You're like the mother I never had," she'd say, holding my hand. Daniel was glowing, working as a sales manager at an auto parts company, always saying he wanted to give Madison a better life. They married 6 months later, a small ceremony at City Hall. I paid for the reception, about $15,000. I didn't complain. He was my son. Then the requests began. Mrs. Julie, rent's been tough. Maybe we could stay with you for a while to save up? My house had 4 bedrooms. I used one. 2 had been closed since Robert died. It made sense. Of course, honey. The house is big. That was my first mistake. They arrived with a few suitcases. A week later, 10 boxes. A month later, their things outnumbered mine. Madison started rearranging everything. Mrs. Julie, this couch is old, right? Why don't we move it to the back room and get a modern one? I hesitated. That was the couch Robert and I used to sit on to watch movies every Saturday night. But Madison smiled sweetly. You deserve a prettier home. I nodded. The couch was gone. Then it was the kitchen table, the curtains, the paintings. One by one, every piece that held my memories disappeared. And I stayed quiet because I didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law. Before I knew it, the house no longer looked like mine. Daniel was always working, coming home late. Whenever I tried to talk about the changes, he'd sigh. Mom, Madison's just trying to help. She likes things more modern. Help. It was always help. Then came the money requests. Mrs. Julie, the car broke down. Could you lend me $5,000? I'll pay you back next month. They never did. Madison needs dental treatment, $15,000. It's her health. I paid and never saw a receipt. Mom, the company's late on payroll. Can you lend us $10,000 so we're not short this month? I helped again. Over 2 years, I had given them $35,000 and never saw a cent returned. Madison grew more comfortable, more entitled. Mrs. Julie, could you eat in your room tonight? We're having some friends over. Or, please don't rearrange the kitchen. I know where everything goes now. My bedroom became the only space that still felt like mine. Then, one night, they came into my room. Daniel sat on the bed. Madison stood by the door, arms crossed. Mom, we need some money to invest, about $20,000. I swallowed hard. Daniel, I've already given you so much. Madison sighed loudly. Daniel looked away. Mom, we live here, help with bills. But I paid for everything: utilities, food, internet, and said nothing. I'd learned that my voice no longer mattered. I refused. No one loses their home overnight. It happens slowly, so slowly, that by the time you notice it's already gone. The first few months after they moved in, I still felt at home. I drank coffee in the kitchen, watered my plants, watched TV in the living room. But then things began to shift. Madison was always up before me, already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. Coffee her way, breakfast her way, even the cups and plates rearranged. Good morning, Mrs. Julie. I just tidied up a bit. It looks cleaner, doesn't it? Cleaner. That's what she called the kitchen I had kept organized for 40 years. I forced a smile. It's fine, dear. But it wasn't fine. The next day, when I looked for my white porcelain mug with blue flowers, the one Robert gave me for our 20th anniversary, it was gone. Madison, have you seen my mug? Oh, that old thing? It had a crack, so I tossed it. I bought you a new one, more modern. A crack? It was perfect. She didn't ask. She just decided. That's when I knew. She wasn't helping, she was taking over. In the following weeks, it felt like a slow invasion. Madison redecorated a little corner of the living room, then the whole room, then the hallway. My hand-embroidered pillows disappeared. I donated them, they looked too old-fashioned. Old-fashioned? I had stitched them myself. The linen curtains my mother left me were replaced with plastic blinds. Easier to clean, Mrs. Julie. The rugs from our travels were rolled up and shoved into storage. Too dusty. Piece by piece, I was pushed into my room. Madison was always organizing, refreshing, erasing every trace of me from that house. Even the family photos began to vanish from the walls. I put them in an album. It looks less cluttered. Cluttered. My family was visual clutter to her. Daniel had become a ghost. Out by 7 a.m. Home by 10 p.m. Eat, shower, sleep, repeat. Weekends were spent glued to his phone or out with Madison, running errands. Every time I tried to talk, he'd cut me off. "Mom, she's only trying to help. You're being stubborn." Stubborn because I wanted my house to stay mine. I started to feel small, erased, like an intruder in my own home. The money requests kept coming, sometimes in Madison's sugary voice, sometimes from Daniel, awkward and hesitant. "Mrs. Julie, I need a little for some medical tests." Or, "Mom, I'm short this month. Can you help with 3,000? And I always did, because that's what mothers do. We think we're helping. But after lending more than $35,000 and never seeing any of it again, I realized the truth. I wasn't helping. I was being used. Everything became clear one Friday night. I was reading in my room when I heard laughter from the living room. Madison was on the phone. The door was cracked open. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but her voice was too loud. "No worries. Everything's going as planned. The old lady's a pushover. She gives us everything we ask for. The house is practically mine already. She only stays in her bedroom. I control the rest. She won't do anything. She's one of those lonely old women who are scared to be alone. Daniel's her whole world. She'd never risk losing him." I heard every word, every laugh. My hands shook around the book. I realized I wasn't the owner of that house anymore, not the respected mother I thought I was. I was the weak old woman in their way. I closed the door quietly, sat on the bed, and took a deep breath. I didn't just feel sad, I felt ashamed. Ashamed for letting it go that far, for accepting every humiliation in silence, for believing that being a good mother meant tolerating everything. But with that shame came something stronger: dignity. I would no longer be the weak old woman. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I wouldn't stay silent anymore. The chance came 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, when I woke up and realized the house was empty. The silence that day wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of life. Even before I opened my eyes, I knew something was wrong. I got up, heart pounding, slipped on my slippers, and opened my door. The hallway was dark and cold. No smell of coffee, no sound of TV, nothing. "Daniel," I called. Silence. "Madison." No answer. I stepped into the living room and my world collapsed. Everything was gone. The gray couch Madison had bought to replace. Mine gone. The oak bookshelf from my grandmother gone. The mahogany cabinet that had lasted through 3 generations gone. I ran to the dining room table, chairs, chandelier, all gone. I rushed to the kitchen. Cabinets stood open and empty. Even the refrigerator, stove, microwave, and blender were gone. Then I looked toward the corner near the window and my knees gave out. The built-in closet where I kept Robert's clothes. The flannel shirt he wore every Sunday, the leather jacket I wore to his funeral, his ties, everything gone. They had even taken the clothes of a dead man. I collapsed on the cold kitchen floor, a scream tearing from deep inside me, a scream I had probably been holding in for years. How could they? I don't know how long I stayed there. Then, I saw it on the window ledge, a folded piece of paper. I stood up, trembling, and picked it up. Daniel's handwriting steady, calm, as if he were writing a recipe instead of destroying his mother's life. Mom, I'm sorry it had to be this way, but there was no other choice. You'd never understand. Madison's always dreamed of going to Paris. She deserves to experience something beautiful. I wanted to give that to her. We sold everything and got a good price, $180,000, enough for an amazing trip and still some left to invest. Don't be upset, it was all just old stuff. You don't need all of it. The house is too big for you now. When we're back, in about 2 weeks, we'll talk about the future. Love, Daniel. I read it once, twice, 10 times. Each word cut like a knife. Old stuff. The piano Robert used to play on winter nights, where he taught me a few simple notes despite my clumsy fingers. Old. The crystal cabinet holding our wedding glasses, where I had kept 40 years of memories. Old. The photo albums, Daniel's baby clothes, the love letters Robert once wrote me, all of it was old. My entire life, in my son's eyes, was outdated. My hands trembling, I picked up the phone and called Daniel. The line rang several times before he answered. "Hey, Mom," he said cheerfully, his voice light, with music and laughter echoing in the background. "Daniel," I choked. "What have you done?" "Oh, you saw the note, right? I know it must have been a shock at first, but you sold everything. Daniel, even your father's clothes." Silence, then a frustrated sigh. "Mom, you're overreacting. We just sold some stuff. It's not the end of the world. You still have the house, your own room, a place to sleep. You didn't ask me. You didn't even tell me. Those things were my life. They were all old, Mom. Just collecting dust. Madison's right. You're too attached to the past. We needed the money." His tone softened, as if he were soothing a child. "Madison deserves this, Mom. She deserves to go to Paris, to enjoy something beautiful. I've never given her anything before. And what about me? Don't I deserve respect?" I asked. Silence again, then his voice, colder now. "Mom, don't make a big deal out of it. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll talk then, okay?" Then he hung up. I stood there, staring at the empty house, the bare walls, the cold floor. Something broke inside me, not sorrow, not despair, but a deep, cold, burning anger. Because I finally understood, they hadn't just taken my furniture. They had taken my dignity, my past, my right to exist. And they thought I would wait for them to come back from Paris, smiling and happy, to talk about the future. Their future, not mine. I sank onto the freezing floor, leaning my head against the wall. "No," I whispered, "not this time." Daniel thought I would sit here crying, waiting. Madison thought I was a fragile old woman who would never fight back. They were wrong. I had 15 days to show them who I really was. When they came back, this empty house would no longer be my problem, it would be theirs. That whole day, I sat in the empty room, no longer able to cry. My tears had dried, but my heart felt hollow. When sunset came, I forced myself up, my body aching, and went to the bathroom to wash my face. The woman in the mirror looked 10 years older than she had the night before. I grabbed my phone and called the police. "Ma'am, what's the issue?" "I want to report a crime. Someone sold all the furniture in my house without permission. Can you come down to the station?" "Yes." I took a taxi since my old car had been borrowed by Daniel 6 months earlier and never returned. At the station, the officer listened wearily as I told him everything. He took notes slowly, then sighed. "Ma'am, legally speaking, your son lives in the same residence. It can't be considered theft, it's a family matter. Unless you have proof of coercion or a signed property agreement, it'll have to go through civil court." I left feeling hollow. No one was going to help me. In the taxi back home, the driver tried to make small talk, but I couldn't respond. When I arrived, the silence was heavier than ever because now I knew no one would seek justice for me. I sat on the edge of my bed, the only piece of furniture left, because it was where I slept. I stared into the empty space until the doorbell rang. I stood up slowly and opened the door. It was Celia, my neighbor, for over 20 years, a small woman with neatly tied silver hair and thick glasses, holding a container of food. "Julie, what happened?" "Last night I saw a truck taking furniture out and thought you were moving." I could barely speak. They sold everything, Celia." Her face went pale. "Everything? You mean Daniel and Madison?" I nodded. "They took it all and flew to Paris." Celia stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She looked around the empty room and covered her mouth. "Oh, dear God, Julie, that's awful. Did you call the police?" "Yes. They said it's a family issue and told me to get a lawyer." Celia shook her head angrily, set the food on the kitchen counter, and pulled a plastic chair in from the porch. "Sit down. Eat something." I obeyed, though I couldn't taste a thing. Celia watched me with a mix of pity and outrage. Then she said something that made my heart pound. "Julie, there's something you need to know." I looked up, my heart racing. "What is it?" Celia moved closer, lowering her voice as if afraid someone might hear. "A few months ago, I was at the supermarket and overheard 2 women talking in the housewares aisle. One of them mentioned a young woman who scammed her own mother, sold all her things, and disappeared. Her name was Madison." I felt the blood drain from my face. At first I didn't believe it. I thought it was just someone with the same name. But later, when I saw Madison living here with you dressed up, spending money like crazy, I started to wonder. "Julie, you should look her up online." My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and typed, "Madison Cole." The results made my stomach drop. Dozens of articles appeared. Woman under investigation for defrauding elderly victims in Texas. Daughter-in-law sells family assets and disappears. I clicked one. Her face stared back at me, slightly younger, different hairstyle but unmistakably Madison. The article said she had conned at least 3 families. She would pose as a kind girlfriend or daughter-in-law, gain trust, get married, move in, sell everything, then vanish. The last victim was her own mother, a 72-year-old woman left with nothing. That woman had pressed charges, but Madison fled to another state before the police could act. And that state was where I lived, where she met Daniel. The room seemed to spin. Celia took my hand, her face hardening. She did it to her mother. And now, she's done it to you. I sat there, silent, trying to process what was right in front of me. Did Daniel know? Could my son have known and still gone along with it? Or was he just a lovesick fool under her spell? Either way, as I stared at the news articles on my phone, something inside me came alive, not just anger, but resolve. Madison thought I was weak, a helpless victim she could manipulate. She was wrong. I had 15 days before they came back, and I wouldn't waste a single one. I turned to Celia. "Can you help me?" She smiled a small, steady smile. "Of course." And right there, in that empty kitchen, with the only person left who still cared, my plan began to take shape. They had taken everything, but they'd forgotten one thing. I still had my mind, my strength, and resources they knew nothing about. When Daniel and Madison came back from Paris, they wouldn't find a frail old woman crying in a corner. They'd meet the woman who had prepared the most expensive lesson of their lives, and they would pay dearly for it. The next morning, I woke up with a clear purpose. Not blind rage anymore, but focus and strategy. I showered, brushed my hair, and put on a touch of lipstick. Looking into the mirror, I told myself, "You have 15 days. Make every minute count." My first call was to my late husband's attorney, Attorney Adams, the man who had helped finalize Robert's estate after his death. "Mrs. Julie, it's been a long time. How can I help you?" I told him everything from Daniel and Madison moving in, to the unpaid loans, to the day I woke up to an empty house and the trip to Paris. He listened quietly, interrupting only to ask short, precise questions. When I finished, he sighed. "Julie, this is complicated. Your son lived with you. Without formal ownership documents or a revoked power of attorney, it'll be a civil matter. But tell me whose name is on the house deed." "Mine. Only mine. When Robert passed, he left everything to me. Daniel was never added." He paused, then said, "Good. That means the property is entirely yours. Daniel has no legal claim to it, right?" "That's right. Besides the house, do you have other assets?" I took a deep breath. It was time to reveal what Daniel had never known. Robert set up a separate savings account. He didn't include it in the will because he wanted me to have an emergency fund. About $420,000. I heard Adams pause. "Does your son know about it?" "No. Robert told me to keep it private so if I ever needed to start over, I could." "Understood. And your house, what's its market value now?" 2 years ago, about $800,000, but prices have gone up. Probably around $890,000 now. He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke slowly. "Julie, suing Daniel for selling the furniture will take years, cost a fortune, and lead nowhere. Even if you win, he'll have spent all the money in Paris. There's a better way." My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" "Sell the house before they return. Move somewhere smaller, safe, and invest the rest. Legally shield it so they can't touch a single cent, not even through court." I hesitated. "And my will?" he asked next. "I have one, but it's old. It still leaves everything to Daniel." "Then we'll rewrite it immediately, remove him completely, and add legal justification so he can't contest it." "Can I really do that?" "Absolutely. As long as we have evidence of exploitation and unauthorized sale of property, it's airtight." "Then let's do it." "Julie, selling a house that size usually takes 1 to 2 weeks if the buyer has cash. Are you sure?" "Completely sure." The next day, Attorney Adams arranged for a real estate agent to appraise the property. The man measured, took notes, and said, "You could sell for about $890,000. If you list it at $850,000, it'll go fast." "Do it," I replied. 3 days later, 3 families came to see it. By early the following week, one offered the full $890,000 cash. I accepted immediately. Meanwhile, Attorney Adams began drafting my new will. "But Julie," he said, "we'll need proof." "I already have it," I answered, remembering my plan with Celia. That night, we sat in her kitchen, in front of her old laptop. "Julie, does Madison have social media?" "Yes, Facebook and Instagram." "Perfect." We opened her page. Dozens of photos appeared. Madison at the Eiffel Tower, Daniel at the Arc de Triomphe, fancy dinners, designer bags, daily posts. One caption read, "Finally living my dream. After all the sacrifices, life has rewarded me. Paris, I love you." Sacrifices, she called, stealing my home a sacrifice. "Screenshot everything," Celia said. We saved every image, every caption, every date. Then we printed old news articles about Madison, records of previous victims, police reports, photos, everything. "This is gold, Julie," Celia said. "Proof of repeated fraud." Attorney Adams submitted it all, officially filing charges for financial exploitation, fraud, and emotional abuse. "They won't be arrested immediately," he warned, "but this file will make sure they never recover from this." A week later, the house was sold. I received $890,000, bought a cozy 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony overlooking a park for about $380,000. I had $510,000 left. Combined with my savings $420,000 that made $930,000. My lawyer helped me invest it safely under my name only, legally protected so Daniel could never touch it, not even if he tried to sue. After the sale went through, I moved into my new home, a place that finally felt like mine. Celia helped me unpack, chatting about how this new place felt like a fresh start. I smiled, because I felt in control of my life again. The night before they came back, I sat on my balcony with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. I thought to myself, tomorrow, they'll learn that the weak old woman they left behind is gone. I didn't lose sleep from fear anymore, but from anticipation. Everything had to be perfect, every piece in its place. When Daniel and Madison stepped off that plane tanned, smug, expecting to find me broken and defeated, they'd see the exact opposite. Before they were due to return, I had already signed the papers for my new apartment with Attorney Adams. The young clerk smiled warmly. "Congratulations, ma'am, a new home, a new beginning." The apartment was on the 10th floor of a modern building with security, elevators, and cameras, all things I had never had in my old house, which now belonged to someone else. Over the next few days, I chose the furniture myself. I went from store to store and bought exactly what I wanted: a soft sofa, a round dining table, a low bookshelf, and sheer white curtains that let the sunlight in. Everything was mine to decide. For once, no one told me to modernize or update. Celia came with me. "Julie, this place is beautiful. You look different already." And I truly was different. I felt alive again. I bought new clothes, went to the salon, got my nails done, and almost didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. That woman stood tall, her eyes clear and strong, no longer the fragile old lady. On the 4th day, Attorney Adams called. "Mrs. Julie, the new will is ready for signing." I went to his office, filled with files and the familiar smell of coffee. He handed me the document. "Read it carefully." I read every line. Everything was clear. Daniel was fully disinherited, not out of spite, but for specific legal reasons: abandoning his mother, misappropriating property, and betraying family trust. All of my assets would go to 3 charities: a nursing home, an organization supporting abused women, and a public school for underprivileged children. Daniel would receive nothing, and Madison even less. "Are you sure about this, Julie?" he asked. "Completely." I signed my name. The 2 witnesses signed theirs, and everything was notarized and filed. As I left the office, I didn't feel sadness, only relief, as if a heavy stone had finally been lifted from my chest. 3 days before their return, Celia and I finished preparing the gift folder. We sat in my new kitchen, still smelling faintly of fresh paint and wood, with papers neatly stacked in front of us. "Let's organize it like a proper legal case," Celia said, adjusting her glasses. She had worked as a legal secretary for 30 years and knew exactly what to do. We bought a large black document case, with colored dividers and elastic straps. In the first section, we placed printed screenshots from Madison's Instagram and Facebook, all her pictures from Paris, her boastful captions, her selfies in fancy restaurants, and photos of luxury shopping bags. In the second section were old newspaper articles about her previous scams, victim statements, and reports about how she had once done the same thing to her own mother. The third section contained a copy of the police report I had filed: property misappropriation, emotional damage, and family fraud. The fourth section held the legal notice signed by Attorney Adams, demanding the return of $180,000 they had earned from selling my belongings, within 15 days, with interest and penalties as allowed by law. The fifth section contained a copy of the title deed from my old house, stamped in red with the words, "Sold." And the final section, the ending to it all, held a copy of my new will, along with a handwritten letter I had written to my son. "Daniel, you once told me old things had no value, so I've decided to throw away everything old in my life, including the illusion that you're still my son. The house has been sold, the money invested and protected, so you'll never touch it. You've been officially disinherited, not out of revenge, but out of fairness. I hope your trip to Paris was worth it, Mom." When we finished the folder, we both stared at it in silence. Celia finally whispered, "When she sees this, she'll probably faint." I smiled. "I know." On Saturday, 2 days before they returned, I wrapped everything up. I called to cancel the landline from the old house, changed my cell number, and blocked Daniel and Madison on every social platform. Attorney Adams had advised me, "Mrs. Julie, cut off all direct contact. They can only reach you through my office. That way, you stay in control." Control, something I had lost a long time ago. I also contacted my bank and insurance company to remove Daniel's name from any emergency contact lists. On Sunday, the day before they came back, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a new shawl, sipping hot coffee as the sunset turned the sky orange and the city lights began to glow. I whispered softly, as if Robert could hear me, "You always said I was stronger than I thought. Maybe I finally believe it." A soft breeze stirred the curtain, and for a moment, I felt like he was there, smiling. Monday morning, the day they returned, I woke up early, showered, and dressed in a white blouse, dark jeans, and comfortable flats. I tied my hair back, put on a touch of lipstick, and smiled at my reflection. "Today's your day, Julie," I murmured. I placed the heavy black folder in my bag and waited. I knew sooner or later there would be a call, or Daniel would show up at the old house, or try to reach me in a panic. And when that happened, they would realize that the woman they had left behind no longer existed. The call came that afternoon. I was sitting on the balcony, sipping mint tea, when my phone buzzed a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Mom, please, you have to listen to me." It was Daniel. His voice was trembling, panicked, with wind and traffic noise in the background. "Mom, what's happening? I just got home, and there are strangers here. They said they bought the house. Someone broke in. You have to call the police." I took a deep breath. "No one broke in, Daniel. I sold the house." There was a long silence. I could hear his quick, shallow breathing. "What? What did you say?" "I said I sold the house for $890,000 paid in full last week. You can't do that. That was the family home." "No, Daniel. It was my home. Only mine. Your name was never on the deed. And a real family doesn't sell their mother's belongings to take a vacation in Paris." I heard Madison shouting in the background, her voice sharp and frantic. "What? What did she do?" Daniel nearly screamed. "Mom, wait. Listen. We know we messed up. We're sorry. But you can't just sell the house. We don't have anywhere to live. That's no longer my problem." "How can you say that? I'm your son. And I was your mother once, but you treated me like garbage." Madison grabbed the phone, screaming, "Mrs. Julie, are you insane? You can't do this to us. We have rights." "Rights? Rights," I said calmly. "The only right you have is to return the $180,000 you stole from me. Nothing else. You'll regret this. I'll sue you," she shrieked. I hung up and blocked the number. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt at peace. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was them. Daniel had a backpack, his face red and furious. Madison wore large sunglasses, smeared lipstick, her eyes blazing with rage. I opened the door but left the chain on. "Mom, please, let us in. Just talk to us." "There's nothing left to say, Daniel." Madison pushed forward. "Mrs. Julie, have you lost your mind? You sold the house without telling us? That's illegal." "No, it's not. The house was mine. I had every right to sell it. But we lived there. You lived there for free. And in return, you sold everything I owned." Daniel's voice cracked like a child's. "Mom, please. We know we were wrong. I know I was wrong, but you can't do this. We have nowhere to sleep tonight. I wouldn't know, maybe a hotel, with whatever's left of the $180,000 you stole." Madison screamed. "You're a horrible old witch. You've always been selfish and hateful." I met her eyes and smiled. "I have a gift for you, Madison." "A gift?" I picked up the black folder from the table near the door and handed it through the small opening. Daniel took it, confused. "What is this?" "Open it." He did, and his face turned pale as he flipped through each section. Madison snatched it, flipping through the pages. Photos from Paris, news articles about her fraud cases, the police complaint, the legal notice, the deed showing the house was sold. When she reached the last section and saw the will, her face went white. "No, this can't be." "It can, and it's legal. You have 15 days to return the $180,000. If you don't, I'll press charges for fraud, theft, and emotional abuse punishable by up to 5 years in prison." Madison started shaking. Her knees gave out, and she collapsed onto the hallway floor, hitting her head hard. Daniel screamed, "Madison! Madison!" I stood still. A neighbor rushed out, alarmed. Call an ambulance, I said calmly. Daniel turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, please help me. I already did. I helped myself, I said, and closed the door. I stood there, listening to the sounds outside Daniel's sobs, Madison's groans, the wail of the ambulance, the murmurs of neighbors. But I didn't open the door again. Not out of cruelty, but because I had chosen myself. 2 hours later, a text came from an unknown number. It was Daniel. Mom, Madison's in the hospital. She had a panic attack. She's in bad shape. Please help me. We'll give the money back. Just this once. I read it and blocked the number. I had helped enough, and all I'd ever gotten in return was pain and betrayal. I sat on my new sofa, turned on the TV, and made myself a simple dinner: rice, beans, and grilled chicken breast. I ate slowly, gazing at the glowing city outside, and thought, I survived. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. The next morning, I woke up with sunlight streaming through the curtains. I no longer wondered, what will they do to me today? Or will I ever have peace? I already had it. I made breakfast toast with butter and hot coffee, then sat on the balcony, wrapped in my robe, watching the city wake up. And that was when the doorbell rang again. I looked through the peephole. Daniel, alone. His face was drawn, stubbled, clothes wrinkled. He looked 10 years older overnight. I hesitated, then opened the door, still keeping the chain on. What do you want, Daniel? He looked at me, eyes red. Mom, please, just 5 minutes. I paused, then unlatched the chain and opened the door. He stepped in, looking around the new apartment, the soft furniture, the plants, the sunlight. You've rebuilt everything, he whispered. Yes. I rebuilt my life, Daniel, the one you both tried to destroy. He bowed his head, sat on the couch, buried his face in his hands, and began to cry. Not the kind of crying meant to manipulate, but the sobs of someone finally facing the weight of their own choices. I stayed silent. Daniel spoke. Again, his voice trembling like a confession. She controlled me from the start. Madison knew exactly what to say, how to say it. She made me believe you were the problem, that you were old-fashioned, that you were holding us back. I looked him straight in the eye. And you believed her? He shouted, desperate. I did. Because I was weak, because I was lonely, because after Dad died, I felt lost. She made me feel important again. The room fell silent. Daniel wiped his face with his sleeve, took a deep breath, and went on, his voice breaking. When we came back from Paris yesterday and saw strangers in the house, I panicked, but not because of the house. It was because I finally realized you were right. We did something terrible. And Madison? I asked coldly. Daniel swallowed hard. She's gone. Gone? What do you mean? She left the hospital last night, took her backpack, and disappeared. She left a note saying she wouldn't stay to face the consequences. She left me, Mom. I looked at him and felt nothing. So you finally know who she really is. Daniel nodded, tears streaming down his face. I read the folder you gave us. I saw everything, the news reports, the scams, what she did to her own mother. Dear God, I brought that woman into our home. Into my home, I corrected. Yes, into your home. He looked at me, desperate. Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please, help me. I have nowhere to go. I have nothing left. What about the money from Paris, the 180,000? It's gone, Mom. Madison spent it all: luxury hotels, fine dining, endless shopping. She said we deserved it, and I let her, because I was an idiot. I took a deep breath, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank slowly, and came back. "What do you want me to do?" "Just let me stay here for a few days, Mom. Until I get back on my feet, find a job, save up." "No." Daniel blinked, stunned. "What?" I said no. "You're not staying here." "Mom, please." "No, Daniel." My voice came out stronger than I expected. "You left me alone in an empty house. You sold your father's memories. You treated me like I was nothing. And now you want me to forget all that? To welcome you back like nothing happened? I'm sorry. I really am." Sorry doesn't bring back your father's piano. It doesn't bring back your grandmother's crystal cabinet. It doesn't bring back the memories you sold like trash. He jumped up, panicked. "Mom, I'm begging you. Sit down." He did. I went to my room, came back with a smaller folder, and placed it on the table. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside the folder was a copy of the new will, the handwritten letter I wrote, and another document prepared by Attorney Adams. "You are officially disinherited, Daniel. Everything has been notarized, legalized, and cannot be changed. When I die, you will receive nothing, not a single dollar, not even a teaspoon." His face turned pale. "Mom, there's more. This is a legal notice requiring you to return $180,000. If you don't pay within 15 days, I will file criminal charges. Property misappropriation can lead to jail time." "Mom, I don't have any money." "Then find it. Sell what you still have. Borrow. Work. Do what Madison should have done. Face the consequences." He looked at me as if I were a stranger. And maybe I was, because the mother he once knew, the one who endured, forgave, stayed silent, died that morning when I woke up alone in that empty house. The woman standing before him now had chosen her own dignity. Daniel stood up, trembling, holding the folder as he walked toward the door. He turned back, his voice breaking. "Mom, I still love you. No matter what, I still love you." I looked straight into his eyes and replied calmly, "I loved you once too, Daniel, but love doesn't mean accepting pain. You taught me that in the cruelest way possible." He opened the door and walked out. I didn't lock it immediately. I just stood there, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway, the elevator doors opening, closing, then silence. I locked the door, walked to the balcony, sat down, and cried. Not out of pain, but out of relief. For the first time in my life, I had drawn a line, dared to say no, and chosen myself, and that was freedom. 3 months passed since that day. 3 peaceful months, no calls, no tears, only time to heal. Daniel tried calling a few times from unknown numbers, leaving voicemails, sometimes desperate, sometimes angry, sometimes begging for forgiveness. I blocked them all. Attorney Adams handled everything through his office. Daniel couldn't repay the $180,000 because Madison had vanished with all the money. The criminal case moved forward, and the Persetted court ordered Daniel to repay in installments $2,500 each month for 6 years. It would take time, but it was justice enough. And Madison? Her story ended in a way I didn't expect. A month later, Attorney Adams called me. "Mrs. Julie, there's news about Madison. The police caught her. She tried to scam another family, but the victims recognized her and reported it right away. She was arrested on the spot. My heart pounded. And then? She'll be prosecuted for all charges, including your case. If convicted, she could face 5 to 8 years in prison. I hung up and sat in silence. Madison, the woman who once walked into my home with a fake smile and careful deceit, was finally caught. Not because I sought revenge, but because her own greed destroyed her. That was life's natural justice. Time passed slowly, but warmly. I started attending the senior club at the community center near my apartment. I met many other women, including Celia. We did crafts, danced, and played dominoes. We laughed a lot. I realized I still had a life beyond the labels of Daniel's mother or Robert's wife. I was Julie, a woman with a voice, with passions, choices, and true friends. They, like me, had known loss, betrayal, and pain, yet still stood strong. And from them, I drew strength again. 6 months later, I received a handwritten letter from Daniel. I hesitated, then opened it. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask for anything. I destroyed everything, but I need you to know that I understand now. I'm living in a small rented room in the suburbs, working as a delivery driver. I'm paying my debt on time, month by month. The amount is small, but it's fair. Every morning, I wake up remembering what I did and feeling regret. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I finally understand what Dad tried to teach me about character, honor, and respect. I learned it too late, in the hardest way possible. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. If not, I understand. Your son, the one who no longer deserves to be called Daniel." I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and stored it in a drawer. I didn't call, I didn't reply, but I didn't throw it away either. Because somewhere inside me, the part that had been a mother for over 30 years still held a small hope that he might truly have changed. But it wasn't his decision whether we would reconnect, it was mine, and I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be, and that was okay. A year later, on my 69th birthday, I hosted a small party in my apartment. I invited my friends from the community center, Celia, Attorney Adams and his wife, and a few neighbors. The room was filled with balloons, cake, wine, and laughter. I danced, sang, and laughed until my stomach ached. When night fell and everyone had gone home, I stood alone on the balcony, looking up at the sparkling stars. I smiled and thought, I did it. I survived betrayal, rebuilt my life, and chose myself. I opened my phone and looked at an old photo, Robert and me on our wedding anniversary, his arms around me as I smiled. And this time, that smile wasn't from the past anymore. It belonged to now. "Robert," I whispered. "I did what you told me to do." I stood up. A gentle breeze stirred the curtain, and for a brief moment, I felt, though I couldn't explain how, that he was there, watching proudly. Today, 2 years after that nightmare, my life is completely different. I wake up whenever I want, sip coffee on the balcony, read books, and travel from time to time, small trips, nothing extravagant, but mine. I take care of my plants, attend painting classes, have real friends, and most importantly, I have peace. The money I saved remains intact, safely invested, generating income that allows me to live comfortably. I don't need anyone. Daniel still makes his court-ordered payments and no longer tries to contact me directly, only through Attorney Adams. I stand firm in my decision because this was never about revenge or cruelty, it's about dignity. It's a lesson that love doesn't mean accepting pain, that family isn't an excuse for disrespect, and that forgiveness isn't required when there's no real change. If you're listening to this and have ever been disrespected, manipulated, or used by someone who was supposed to protect you, I want you to know, you don't have to endure it. You're not cruel for setting boundaries. You're not wrong for choosing your peace. It took me 68 years to believe that being a good mother, a good wife, a good person didn't mean erasing myself, didn't mean accepting everything and forgiving endlessly. I learned, in the hardest way, that kindness doesn't mean letting people trample you. Love doesn't mean being blind. And setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who respects herself, who knows her worth, and that has no price. They took my furniture, thinking they'd taken everything. But they forgot one thing. No one can take away my strength, my resilience, or my ability to rise again. When I understood that, when I stood up from that cold, empty floor, I wasn't broken anymore, I was free. And have you ever had to choose between pleasing others and respecting yourself? Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Leave a comment. I want to know you're not alone on this journey. If this story touched your heart, if you saw yourself in any of these words, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this aren't just mine, they belong to all of us who once had to choose between sinking or learning to fly.